Well, hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Bikinis in Boarding School. I am so excited to be here today with Melody Fairchild. She is one of my former classmates who came to Holy Highway a few months before I graduated on my second stay there. And it was absolutely crazy looking at a couple pictures she shared from back in the day. So I'm excited to put those in the little thumbnail and put them up there. We were just joking about my awful fashion sense. Horrible yellow shirts. I was just obsessed with.
Mine wasn't any better, so
We didn't have any choices though, did we?
no. But mine sucked before I got there, so
So where did you live before you got to the Holy Highway?
So I grew up in Virginia,
Okay. How old were you when you got to the farm?
14.
Wow, you were so young.
I was the baby
Yeah,
for up until like my last month or two there. I was the youngest one there.
my first stay there, there was a girl that was 12. I remember her having her 13th birthday on the farm. And, we think back now and those ages of 14 to 17, you're young no matter what. But in hindsight, 14 was so young. And to
Yeah.
throw a 14-year-old in with 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, all of these, that's some
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
thanks to trying to navigate.
Yeah. It was a lot.
What do you
I
remember?
learned a lot while I was there.
Yes, I'm excited to kind of dig into that. So, how did your parents find out about this place?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I am thinking probably through church because that's where they got all their information. It's the only place I can think of that they would have found
Yeah.
anything about it.
How did you find out you were going to this place?
Um, so they pulled me into their room one morning and said, "Hey, we're taking you to Texas today. You're gonna stay there. It's a camp and it's you're gonna learn things." And I don't remember exactly how they described it, but it was not what I thought it was gonna be.
Right. Right. No, it's a shock for so many girls. I think the stories of what they were told, they're picturing summer camp, summer church camp and riding horses and all this fun stuff. And
Yeah,
it
I
was,
don't remember if they portrayed it like a summer camp. I I honestly that's like one memory I can't remember like how they
yeah.
I was not excited to go. I was not thinking it was going to be fun. But I don't remember exactly what how they had explained it to me.
Do you remember them telling you how long you were going to be there?
9 to 12 months,
Okay.
I think
So
they
they
had
did
said.
give that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you got to the farm, what do you remember?
Um, I remember being incredibly, I remember getting dressed that morning because we drove. So it was a 2 day drive. And I remember getting up in the hotel that morning and getting dressed in my big skater pants. And for some reason, I had become attached to a polo shirt and I put a hair bow in my hair. Now, mind you, I had never worn a hair bow up until that day, and I have not worn one since. And it's something that was joked about after the fact. It's like, why would you have worn a hair bow? Like, that's not what made you do that. I have no idea, but I remember pulling up and Sister Janice coming out, and my mom being so excited to see her because they had talked a lot before I got there, I think. And then like going into Sister Janice's office, and then bringing in my older girl. Mind you, I grew up very sheltered. I had very religious. Like we didn't secular music to us was oldies like Beach Boys and Elvis, and you get in trouble if you listen to them. So I
Wow.
came from a very strict background. I was homeschooled until I got there. I'd never been in public school. I'd never been in a classroom. Um, and so they, and from what I remember, like jumping ahead, what I was there for was not nearly extensive as what other people were
Right.
there for.
Yeah.
So, and I remember them bringing in my older girl, and she starts telling my parents about herself and what got her sent there. And my mom's eyes are bugging out of her head.
Oh, I'm
And
sure.
I'm going, they're not leaving me here with.
Right. They've clearly gotten this place
I'm like,
mistaken
they
for
don't,
something else.
clearly, they don't understand that what I have been doing is really not that bad. I'm not a bad kid. They're
Yeah.
not leaving me here.
Oh my goodness. Do you remember them doing the intake photo?
No.
I had this weird memory last week of the intake photo, and they would put that in your folder. And I remember them showing me at the end of my stay, like they would sometimes show us, like, this is what you looked like when you got here, and this is what you look like now, to try to show us like how broken and miserable and hard and angry we were. And then, what an amazing transformation we had
I
had. But
was
it's like,
looking at my graduation pictures yesterday, and I don't think I looked all that happy.
you were probably scared that it was a trick and you weren't really getting out.
I was because I had gone home before graduation and then came back for graduation.
Wow. Yeah, that's an odd feeling, going home, getting a little bit of taste of what that was like, and that not wanting to go back, but knowing that you have to, because things could get worse if you tried to
Yeah, they could leave me there again.
yeah, man. How many siblings do you have?
I have three.
Okay, and where are you in the lineup?
I'm the oldest.
Okay, we have that in common. So it's interesting because my dad was a pastor when I was a kid growing up. I grew up in a strict Christian family too, and had a lot. I think some of the adjustment was easier to the very religious overtone of this farm because of how I had grown up. Um, I kind of lost where I was going with that, but do you feel like it was easier for you to fit in because of your upbringing and kind of behave the way they wanted you to behave, or was this a struggle to adjust?
In a sense, yes. So I mean, like it was still the religious side of it, the church and everything was still kind of a culture shock to me from what I was used to.
Yeah,
But, I was used to the non-denominational, the singing and dancing and, the constant Bible, everything. So like I was very familiar with that. So I
right.
didn't have as much of a shock factor with that as I think a lot of people probably did that didn't have that background. But there was still, I mean, and there was definitely like a level of conformity that I was used to.
Yeah. Do you remember having much homesickness when you got there?
Yes and no. I remember more like in the first, I remember getting really emotional when I had my first phone call, like after that first 30 days.
Yeah.
I think I had more homesickness the longer I was there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think because I didn't get, what was it? You got your first outing at 60 days, was it? I think. And that was
I,
like a
I
day
think
outing.
so. Yeah.
So I didn't get that because my family was so far away, they couldn't
Yeah.
travel in. So the following outing, that was an overnight. So I went 4 months without seeing my family.
That's how mine was
So
too.
that was, I think I had more homesickness after like that first visit with them than I did earlier on.
Right.
Um, but I mean, it wasn't fun. There was still plenty of homesickness there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting because I had forgotten that part. I know it was harder for us to go home or harder for our parents to come see us. Obviously, they're not going to drive all the way or fly all the way to come see us for a 1 day outing. But that was an added layer of stress that went to it, was that just longing to see family and have that connection. I was flipping through the journal and there's this theme through a few different writings that I'd done in there where I was definitely missing the mother figure, and talking about such and such dorm mom that was in a bad mood and didn't like me, but this one was nice and actually gave me a hug and made me feel seen and valued, and some of these things that just gave off mom energy. Were there any dorm moms that you felt one way or the other just kind of made your stay a little more special or made it harder on you?
Sister Margine and Hope was one of my favorite. I remember liking Sister Sheila, who was in faith when I got there, but I feel like I wasn't with her for very long.
Yeah.
Sister Lucinda
I had totally forgotten about Sister Margine.
yes,
Yeah.
and she would make you every night, you would stand in a circle because I spent most of my time in Hope, I feel like, between Hope and Charity. Um, Sister Lucinda did not like me. And then she really liked me, and then she hated me again.
Depending on which way
Um,
the wind was blowing.
yes, it depended on, where I fell on that, if I was doing good and behaving and, if I was in trouble, she went right back to hating me again. So her and I had very much of a love-hate relationship. But I liked Sister Regine was really nice. I liked her.
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten about Sister Sheila too until recently. And then the picture that you send me, I can totally picture her yelling for her little daughter, Bianca.
Yep.
She was always getting in trouble for something. It would be hard to have been a kid growing up on that farm. You know,
Oh
they got
yeah, absolutely.
attention, they had fun things to do, but what an odd existence for them. I
Yeah,
think about
it
that
wasn't. Yeah, I
sometimes.
mean, like they were there going through it with us almost, but hadn't done anything necessarily to put themselves there.
Yeah. How long did it take you to graduate the program?
I was there for 11 months
Okay.
and then came back a month later. So like April to April.
Okay. And how many girls were in your graduating class?
Uh, I think there was four of us,
Okay. Yeah, they were
three or
usually
four of
pretty
us.
small. Man, it was such an era that you came into. Like, I kind of feel like people came in waves. They would graduate
Yep.
out a few and then bring a few more in. And there was just this wave of new people coming in right about the same time that you were there. So April, we spent 4 months there together.
Yeah.
Um, did you have more than one younger girl or just one?
Yes. I had two. One of them I had for I think I only had her for about a month. She had been with somebody else, and then her older girl was graduating, so they gave her to me.
Okay.
But it was still, even though like she had done her talk isolation and everything, we got TI again for 2 weeks once I got her so that we could get to know each other.
Oh my goodness, I did not realize they would redo that.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awful.
They redid it.
Oh my
um,
gosh.
and then as soon as I think she was my first one. Um, and I'm still friends with her today.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
the second one I got, I think was after her. And I had her for almost like 2.5 months, I think.
Yeah. It's funny because through the journal, I'm starting to pick up on this like older girl, younger girl dynamic. And it's like when she first comes in, oh, she's so sweet. She's such an angel. She's crying a lot. She'll be more fun once the homesickness wears off. And then it's like, I can't stand her. We're fighting all the time. And then, oh, we had to apologize to each other in church and everything's good. It's just this constant back and forth of,
Yeah. Well, I think too, because there was the dynamics of like the people that were there, where there was like a hierarchy. Like I know when I got there, you were one of the older girls. You had been there before. I don't know if I knew you had been there twice, but like you were had been there longer. So like you were there was a food chain, and you were at the
there
top of
was,
it,
yeah. Oh, there were,
and we
there
were
were,
at the bottom of it.
there were
And
hierarchies. I mean, I
yeah, and
got,
it was, the older girls couldn't wait to get rid of the younger girls because then they could actually be around their friends again and,
yeah.
have conversations that they would have to watch because you don't know if the younger girl's going to go snitch you out or not. It's in
Right.
trouble.
Oh my goodness. Like the whole monitoring of other people's conversations and being encouraged to snitch on them. Like
Mm-hmm.
I found this thing where I just thought I was the best thing ever and following God's word because I went and told on a couple of girls for sharing lipstick. Like what kind of culture was that? But I mean, we were afraid to talk, afraid who we were talking around, afraid of forming too close of friendships with people, and yet still wanting to form these meaningful connections at the same time. It was weird. And
I remember getting in trouble for not telling on someone once. I had heard because remember you weren't supposed to stay back in your rooms. You went back there, you did what you had to do, and then you came
yes,
out common area, so everything was monitored.
yep,
But I remember and I don't remember who it was, but they were not supposed to be talking to each other. They were having a conversation. I went, I didn't say anything. I was in and out of the room, but then it had come out later that there was a conversation that was had and that I witnessed it and didn't say anything. And I got hard labor.
wow. I mean, I know that stuff like that went down, but it's interesting hearing a fact like that reminded to me because it helps me process like that whole
Mm-hmm.
tattletale aspect. Like I remember getting assigned the task of watching hard labor. I'm like,
You
what?
watched quite a few days I was on it.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's absolutely horrible. One of my stories is like building a fire for people who were watching hard labor. And I'm like, meanwhile, everyone out on bucket brigade is freezing.
No, you were always very nice on hard labor, though. I always aspired to oversee hard labor, but I spent too much time on it myself to be able to supervise it.
What do you remember getting hard labor for?
Everything.
Yeah.
I remember one day we had a newer dorm mom that was like, she was like a relief dorm mom, and she was only there on the weekends. And of course, like you've gone over how strict the eating plan was and what we were allowed to have.
Yeah.
We were having pancakes that morning and she decided to add bananas. Wasn't in the recipe, wasn't in there. A bunch of us were like, oh, we probably shouldn't do that. And she had been there maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, I think. Um, but we ate them because the dorm mom gave
Yeah.
them to us, and the entire dorm got hard labor.
Wow. Yeah, I have a few stories in my book about the entire dorm getting hard labor, about double demerits and some of this stuff. And I had a friend recently ask me if I feel like I might deal with some elements of hypervigilance that started during this phase of life. I was like,
I can see
huh,
that.
okay, yep. Now as I'm going back and like having that hypervigilance on my mind, I was like, yeah, this constantly seeking for other people's approval. And, how are they going to take this? And, stories of being upset about something, but not being allowed to show your emotion in any way because you knew it was going to be worse.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, you didn't have emotions there.
No, no, you learned really quick how to stop those. And it's
Yeah.
interesting as I look at the pictures because I do see a lot of just kind of stoic faces.
My best friend was just looking through the pictures. She's heard more about this the last 2 weeks than she has in the 15 plus years we've
Yeah.
been friends. She's like, looking at the pictures, it doesn't look that bad. All of you guys are smiling. I was like, because if you didn't smile and you had an attitude, you got in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
like, it was like,
we were brought to churches and put up there to sing and look how
mm-hmm,
great it is and the power of God in these girls' lives. But we were fed a steady diet of Jesus 24/7. From,
yeah.
you got your morning devotionals and then you got your songs and you got this and you got that. And it's like beyond what they were already giving us, we were encouraged to do our own seeking and devotionals and all of that over and above what we were already getting, which was a massive percentage of, let's just call it total time allotted to education. Like, what percentage of that was actually filled with religious teaching?
Oh, all of it was.
Yeah. So back to hard labor. What kind of tasks do you remember having on hard labor?
I remember it was me and somebody else. I don't remember who it was, but we were working on the pig pen, and in the winter, we had put down an old carpet, or we had put down old shingling from when we demoed the rec center. And then we put down a carpet over top of it to get it through. So it was like the beginning of spring-ish. So it all had to be picked up. So we're down there pulling all this up, and her and I are sitting there, and we pull the carpet up. Hundreds of mice went everywhere, up your legs, up all, like it was just a sea of mice.
Oh my gosh.
To this day, I am unrealistically terrified of mice.
Oh my goodness. I
I
have a
can't do
massive
mice.
rodent phobia. I think I would have,
Like
yeah,
if I know there's one, I feel it crawling on me.
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, what a horrific story. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something out of nightmares right there. Just
there
that
was
phrase of we demoed the rec center, like
just
I
brought back
that's a
so many
normal
memories, didn't
phrase.
it?
That's not normal for most people to be like, yeah, we just demoed a building.
I remember I did a lot of demoing of that rec center on
Yeah,
hard labor. We had one day where were carrying all of the trusses that go in the roof, and there was like three of us to each one, and we carried it from the rec center all the way back to the back field and stacked them up there, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
wow.
There's another day we carried all the cinder blocks. We put the cinder blocks in a bucket, and then you would carry them from the rec center all the way to the back and just stack them up.
Yeah.
And we had found out the trick that if you tie your sweatshirt around your waist and you set it on the knot, it
Yeah.
makes it easier. Well, they realized that day what we had done and took our sweatshirts.
Oh my goodness.
So we had to carry it. And then, like, some of us were like throwing it over our back. They wouldn't let us do that because we might hurt ourselves doing that, even though that was easier. But yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was,
Yeah, no, my chronic low back issues, I think of that like you tilt your low back and kind of shove it out to balance the bucket on the front of you. So you're walking with the anterior pelvic tilt, putting that compression on the lower spine. It's
yep. But the purpose of hard labor was not to make it easy.
right, exactly.
So
Do
it
you
was
remember
make it as
being,
hard as we can.
yeah. Do you remember being physically in pain on hard at like after hard labor days?
Oh
Or
my God, it was awful.
okay.
I had blisters. I remember one hard labor day, I was actually sick and I was like, I can't do this. And Brother TK made one of the dorm mom, I think it was a work day. Like I think it was a Monday, like a work day, because everybody was doing stuff. And Brother TK had one of the dorm moms bring a thermometer out to the barn, and I had a fever. And he was like, all right, well, I'm gonna let you go home, but you have to redo this day and you're getting another one.
Oh my goodness.
At that point, I already had like 2 weeks of hard labor.
Yeah.
So like, what's another day?
Yeah. And I remember reaching that point of just not caring. Like, why does it
Yep.
even matter? What's one more day?
Yep. Yep. Or
Wow.
like, if it would rain, so you didn't get to do enough, so then you'd have another day. I'm like, whatever.
And it would be another full day. It wouldn't be the half a
Yes,
day
not
that
a
you got
half
rained
day.
out
It'd be a full
for.
day. Yep. Full
Oh,
day and usually a longer day.
yeah. Yeah. What do you remember about the food on hard labor days?
Wasn't much of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember.
I think the biggest memory I have is like having group lunches when we were on hard labor. And I swear they did it on the days that we were like working on the pig pen or smelled the worst. So that way you're sitting at, so of course separated from everyone else, but hearing everyone else talking about how bad you smell.
Yeah. I remember times where they would have the hard labor girls like sit on the floor and away from everyone else. They definitely
Yep.
segregated you out. Work program days, everyone would be on work program, but if you were on normal work program versus hard labor, you got the normal chores, maybe drive the tractor or do a push mower. Meanwhile, the hard labor girls have the scythe and they're swinging to cut the weeds out of a field.
The
You know, if there
yo-yos.
was, yeah, yo-yos, there would be snacks, but the hard labor girls weren't going to get snacks. They would have to
No.
stand back and watch those that were just on normal work program day getting them.
Yep.
Did you ever do any outings while you were there?
I had a Sister Janice outing, and I remember that because we went to there was like a Chinese buffet that we had gone to at some point. One of the girls' dads had like sent money for them to take us to this buffet once. And I remember I was not there for the Shoney's outing, but I heard about it. And I remember it specifically on this outing because everyone was like, don't overfill your plates or you'll get hard labor.
I
But I
remember
had
the
picked that
Chinese food.
place.
I had forgotten
Yeah.
all about it, but you said it and I remember that.
Yep.
Yes.
I had picked that place. So we went there and I don't even remember what I ate. I don't remember what Sister Janice and I talked about. I just remember that I was so shocked that she let me go up to the buffet by myself and go to the bathroom by myself.
Wow.
That was, I think, the only time I was there that I ever had any alone time.
Wow. That's powerful in and of itself because you think of all these complex emotions that we're experiencing and trying to process at this age, and nobody took the time to one-on-one speak to you individually and just temperature gauge check. Where is this girl's state of mind at? Where are her emotions at? How's she
Yeah,
handling
no.
everything?
And I used to leave notes in that box in the chapel fairly often, Bonnie,
Yeah.
and I would get back we don't need to talk right now.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would get a response, but it was never a call in to see what was going on.
And there was usually a waiting period as well, just
Oh
waiting
yeah,
for
it
an
never
answer to your
happened.
note.
Yep. Oh yeah, it was never a speediest response.
So I found an interesting concept that I'd kind of forgotten as I'm reading the journal. It was the whole process of saying your armor of God to get off of your older girl, younger girl. And you had to say it in chapel in front of people So it was never like a hard date. Like it's been 2 months now. You get to say your armor of God. I don't remember if you had to like put the note in and say you were ready or just wait until they told you you
No,
could
you
say
had
it.
to wait. They first would tell you it was 2 months, but
Yeah.
then so you would count down until that 2 months. Because I'm pretty sure I was on my older girl for 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was on her for 3 months because she was definitely trying to get me to get myself together so I could get off.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I remember it was in chapel and they would just call you and when they felt
Yeah.
appropriate. There was never like any plan in place that I
No.
remember,
There was
for
this like
doing it.
my
It was just
process of saying it. There was this big long delay and I couldn't say it. And she decided she wanted to go home and take a bath because she'd been in the dorms all week. And like, well, I guess I'm stuck for another week. And this weird like manipulation almost of this back and forth.
Mhm.
And this other dorm mom that was frequently in a bad mood, like walking up to me and saying that she thought I was going to pitch a fit, like waiting for me to pitch a fit. And I was like, I know they're trying to like get under my skin and see if they can make me angry. And like knowing that I just had to maintain that calm exterior and just wait for them to tell me that I could say this so I could proceed. But that, yeah, that feeling of just zero control, trying to do everything that was right, being ready to do the next thing and say the Bible verses, but still without the ability to talk any of that.
Yeah. Talk isolation came home with me. Ironically, my mom really liked that concept, so we got it home as
Really?
well.
Oh my
I
goodness.
remember my siblings being so mad. They're like, they learned this because of you.
Yeah. How did you feel about that concept of talk isolation?
Um, I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember it being like, I mean, in the time, it just kind of seemed, that those first 2 weeks was like talk isolation. What the hell are you talking? What do you
Yeah.
mean? Um, it wasn't, I don't think it was as much of a struggle for me in the beginning
Mhm.
because I tend to, when I'm in, you know, an uncomfortable situation, I tend to be real quiet anyways. But I think like the longer it went, the more it bothered me. But
Mhm.
I also was really good at finding ways around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was part of the culture there.
Yeah.
It was part of the program and I
I
don't.
think that, yeah, I think the concept of it, as years went by, bothered me a little bit more and not so
Yeah.
much while I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a statement that I put in my journal and it said something like, I think I'm just going to fast talking. Like I was giving up talking as a form of, doing something righteous or, the way that you would
Sometimes
fast
that was
food.
easier because you couldn't get in trouble if you didn't say something.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of that too. I wonder how many of us might struggle a little bit in our adult life voicing our concerns. I don't know. I sometimes have a harder time speaking up, and some of it could just be who I am as a person. And then other times, I think, I wonder what lasting impacts and lessons the concept of talk isolation had. Because
Yeah.
it feels like a defense mechanism sometimes to where I'll get upset about something, and the safest and most comfortable thing is truly just silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you ever consider running away?
I did on my way there, but then my parents were very animate about showing me where the prison was and how much in the country we were. And they told me all kinds of stories. And when I got there, because they thought I was going to be a runner. So they expected it, which is why I was laughing at your episode with Ashley because I remember when she ran because it was only about 2 weeks after I had gotten there. And I remember everyone saying that when they heard someone ran, they thought it was me.
Wow.
But I heard stories about, coyotes and people out in the woods waiting for you. So I did not go anywhere.
Yeah. No, that was a
I thought
scary.
about it all the time though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm sure there was many nights where we just laid awake fantasizing about running, getting out of there.
Yep,
Did you make friends? I know you said you have one that you still keep in contact with,
I
but
did. I had a group. There was a group of us, which actually we all came in within like the same month of each other, I think. And like
Yeah.
our older girls were friends. So we were like around each other, even though I don't know, do you remember that younger girls couldn't talk to younger
Oh
girls?
yeah. Yeah. They weren't even really supposed to make eye contact.
Right. Yeah, you weren't supposed to do that. But I mean, we would, there were ways around it. But so we were all younger girls and got off of
Okay.
our older girls around the same time. And
Yeah.
we stayed really close. I kept in touch with a lot of them. One of them I still talk to. So I mean, there's still quite a few people that I mean, I'm friends on Facebook with a lot of people that were
Yeah.
there. But I interact with quite a few people still. So I mean, if
That
nothing
is
else, I
really
did
cool.
get some good friendships out of it. I haven't
Yeah.
seen anyone in like 27 years, but
Right. Right. No, I genuinely value the friendships that came out of this. And there is that bond of the shared experience of going through what we went through. And like you said, you've been telling your best friend about it. She's heard more in the last couple weeks than she has in the last 15 years or whatever. But it's, you tell some of these stories and it's hard to really paint the picture or put it into context exactly what we went through. So to be able to talk to someone who lived it with you and be able to throw these stories out and know they get the weird depth and complexity of it is
well, a lot of
refreshing.
it sounds so outrageous when you tell somebody that didn't experience it that you're like, if I tell them, we did X, Y, and Z, they're gonna be like, all right, you're just making this up. Because
Right.
unless you were there, it sounds like it was just made up.
Agreed. Agreed. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Do you remember your favorite meal while you were there?
Spaghetti casserole.
Okay. How about any that you just thought were gross?
Salmon cakes.
Oh, those were so
You just
fun.
remembered those, didn't you?
Oh, I remember that can, opening that
You
canned
remember biting into
salmon
the
and like
vertebrae?
the
Yes,
the
and
vertebrae down the
not
middle of the.
everyone picked out the vertebrae, so you would chomp down on the vertebrae.
It was so gross. Oh my
I
gosh.
have tried to like salmon so many times over the years, and I can't do it. So,
Seriously, I love every one of these episodes because there's at least one memory that just like comes bubbling to the
yep.
surface. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I hadn't even thought about that in ages.
Yep, salmon cakes. And I only recently thought about that. I was like, that's why I can't like salmon. Like I've tried. I've tried it
Yeah.
different ways. I've tried it at restaurants. Like I used to make it for my daughter all the time because she loved it. I could not do it. Like I just
Yeah.
can't. And I was like, that's why I
That's
don't like salmon.
literally where it started from.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So when you were at the farm, did they do Walmart outings still?
We did. We did one Walmart outing.
Do you remember anything
Trying to
about it?
I think each had like $10 each to spend, and it was go get whatever you want, but then bring it back to us to make sure it's something you can actually get.
Yeah.
And then we'll decide. And I remember they had like $10 for each of us in a little sandwich baggie that the dorm mom had. And I remember somebody tried to get like all candy and they wouldn't let them get that. They're like, you can get one thing. I think I bought makeup.
Okay. Yeah.
I think sounds like something I would have done for some reason. I'm thinking eyeliner.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did one of those, and that was, of course, the highlight of the month.
Such a highlight. And I think part of it was just being able to wander around and feel like a normal kid.
Hmm.
There was just
Yeah,
that
because
element.
they let you go in like groups of 4 or 5 or something. Like you had to stay in your group, but there wasn't a dorm mom. So like you could go
Right.
look at the clothes, you could go look at the jewelry, you could go like
Yeah.
it was you were out at the store, which is not
Right.
something we did often.
No, no, just that act of getting off the farm, even if it was
Yep.
to go to a different church and sing or go mow the lawn somewhere. It was just something to kind of break that monotony of farm life. Um, let's see. Do you remember what your favorite dorm was?
Um, I'm pretty sure Hope made me hate yellow forever. I can't stand yellow. Um, dorm wise, it might have been charity.
Yeah, yeah. You probably just spent more time there. I feel like each one of us had a dorm that we probably spent more time in than others.
I spent a lot. I'm pretty sure they were determined to keep me with Sister Lucinda as long as possible.
Do you remember her sneaking to smoke cigarettes out of her bathroom window, or did she maybe quit by the time you were there?
No, she was definitely still smoking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she was a
she
tough
was definitely
one.
still, and you could smell her, but you could also smell her once she came out of her room too, because she would come out, and if she heard something going on, you interrupted her smoke break. You knew you were a
We were
lot
gonna
more
get it.
tongue lashing.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Let's see. All right. So after you left Holy Highway, do you remember having any dreams or nightmares?
not many, but I definitely have had a couple the last couple weeks.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was on hard labor again.
Wow. Isn't it wild how all these years
It
later, like,
it is like I'm remembering little things that I had like completely forgotten about and hidden away. And but then like there's some things where I'm like, I know something happened, but I can't for the life of me remember the details.
yeah. Yeah. In talking with Jolene, she told the story about a girl that ran, and I was the one supervising. And she remembers me standing. It's like as she's telling me this story, I'm listening it to it. And I'm going, yeah, this is familiar. And then I feel like I'm processing and downloading for a good 24 hours after each one of
Hmm.
these interviews, and then little bits and pieces are coming back into focus again, and it's just this weird sensation. And then I have this journal now with confirmation of some of these memories or little details thrown in that I had forgotten all about. And it's weird to see that chapter of my life that I didn't open very often at all. Here and there, a little comment about boarding school and haha, that's funny, but nobody really gets the complexity or depth of what it was. But it's not a chapter that I dig deep into and revisit frequently or anything like that.
No,
So,
I mean it's not something I really talk about, even like with closer friends over the years. Like
yeah,
it's not. I've talked about it more with people over the last few weeks,
yeah,
you know, than I have ever.
yeah. I told my husband a story last night. I said, I'm sorry if I'm talking about this too much lately. It's just all so fresh on my mind and just coming up now for the first time. Um,
It's a lot to process.
it really is. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's healthy to say that and acknowledge it. We were very young, very impressionable at the time, each one of us going through our own thing, but all impacted in a big way that we carried with us in some fashion or another into our adult life, whether
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. It
our
definitely
interaction
played.
with
I
our
mean,
own
and it was such
kids.
a small part of life, but it was such a big,
It
you know,
was,
it's a big part of, all of our upbringing.
it becomes this line of demarcation for us, kind of like the death of someone close to us. There's always that time before and that time after.
Yep.
And for me, it was always the pre Holy Highway days and then post. I didn't feel like I quite fit into my family the same way after that. Things were just different.
Oh yeah. I mean, everything was different when you came home.
Yeah. I don't know if you experienced because you came from a church family. Were there any rumors about you? Did people treat you any different when you got
Oh
back?
yes. Oh yes. So I came home. So I didn't know that I was coming home when I came home. I didn't have a graduation date set. I got called into the office one day and told you're going home tomorrow. And that's I still to this day don't know what it was that made if it my parents pulled me out, if they were letting me go, if it was like a financial thing. I don't know why. I just was called in and I was told you're going home tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. And
Wow.
then we ended so I they took me the next morning and I probably had like 12 hours to tell people I was leaving. And I wasn't supposed to tell anyone I was leaving, but I made contact with a couple of the girls that I was friends with. And 4 o'clock the next morning, brother TK and I were on our way to Dallas airport and I was coming
Wow.
home. But there was definitely, I'm pretty sure there had to have been some type of prayer circle or something that went around my parents' church.
Hmm.
I remember, and I can't remember if this was on an outing or if it was right after I had come home, but we were doing like donuts and coffee or something on a Sunday morning, and my mom and I were setting it up. And there was another woman there that like we knew who she was, but she wasn't like somebody that my mom was friends with. And I had my back to her and she's like, how's your daughter doing that you sent away? And I turned around and my mom goes, she's right here. She's doing really well. And so it was, and I want to say that might have been an outing. I don't remember, but
Yeah.
there was definitely a shadow that kind of followed me around afterwards. 'Cause, like the friends that I had, I didn't have many friends before I left, and I had even less when I came back because things happen at 14, out of sight,
Yeah.
out of mind type thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but there was a lot of people that didn't pay any attention to me before I went that all of a sudden wanted to befriend me. And then there were, the ones whose parents didn't want them to befriend me because they knew I had been sent away.
Yeah.
So remember, we actually, about a year after I got home, we moved to a different state. So I live in Maryland now.
Okay.
And I did not want to move. I was just starting to feel like I was kind of getting my feet set again after coming home. But I was really excited about moving because I would no longer be known as the girl who got sent to a girl's home. I'm
Wow.
going to go to a new place. Nobody's going to know anything about it. I can start fresh. It didn't take very long for that to come out once we moved.
Wow.
But I remember thinking, that was the only plus side to me as far as moving to Maryland was that nobody was going to know that part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember not wanting to think about it much. Just kind of, I'm done with it. Let's move that, just move on from that
Mm-hmm.
chapter. 11 months when you're a 14-year-old kid is a much greater percentage of your life spent away than
Yeah.
11 months when you're in your 40s. I mean, that's a huge percentage of your life. And when you're gone as a kid, any friends, any social dynamic, it changes significantly just year to year when you're in the middle of it. So now you're
Yeah,
removed,
absolutely. There's a
like,
lot of transition at that age.
yeah. And like you said, out of sight, out of mind. And we were removed from all, like, no, you didn't have a lot of secular music or context for some of these things that other kids might have, but you were still aware of what was going on for the most part in the world, where we didn't have any clue
Not
what.
really, but I was once I came to the farm. I learned a lot of stuff there. And I remember my parents even saying after I came home, you learned some things there, didn't you? And I was like, you're the one that sent me there.
So I do remember my first day there, being in the bunk room and having some girls come back and kind of making fun of me, goody two shoes, what are you even here for? And that was kind of that attitude, because there were a lot of them that were there. Like, if they were to list off their rap sheet, they had some pretty impressive trouble that they'd been up
Yeah.
to. And there was the spectrum of girls. You could be on that, I was probated here by the state because I'd done something horrible, and maybe I tried to steal a car, or any number of things that some of these girls might have done, down to I talked back to my parents and didn't toe the line. There was just such a
Yeah.
spectrum. A bad attitude could land you there. So could trying to murder your grandparents.
Minor details. Yeah, no, I remember I was, very low on that spectrum
Yeah.
compared to a lot of the girls that were there when I was there. I think part of that had to do with my age, and most of them were older, but I also
Yeah.
hadn't been, I lived a very sheltered, I didn't know secular music when I was there. The first time I learned about Celine Dion was when we went on an outing to play putt-putt golf once.
Wow. Wow.
I was like, I really like this. And they're like, you don't know what this is? So yeah, I was very sheltered, but I remember there was shortly before I left, we got a 12-year-old there. And rumor had it the reason she was sent there was because she had a bad attitude.
Well, show me a 12-year-old that doesn't have a bad
Right.
attitude. I mean, my daughter was kind of difficult at that age, but
So it was mine.
but I don't think there was a single day, even in the most difficult days, that I thought, I probably just should send you away.
So I always thought that before I had my daughter. We had a really rough couple of years
Mm,
where I started to understand the desperation that some parents have with just not knowing what to do, in a
yeah.
sense. And I did look into places that I could potentially send her. It was more, not so much on like for the reasoning that, some of us were sent there for attitudes. It was more of looking on like the mental health side,
Yeah.
of not wanting an institution, but wanting somewhere that could provide support that I wasn't able to do.
Yeah.
And her and I have talked about this now that we are beyond that. Like, there wasn't one, I mean, the cost of stuff, but then I also had in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm not going to send her just anywhere, because I'm sure the Holy Highway didn't advertise the things that we dealt with. And that's not a situation I want to put her in with. But like looking for somewhere whose kids were in a situation like that, that also worked with the family.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I don't feel that there was any effort or anything really that helped with reunification of the family. I think a lot of it was almost putting more of a divide in, like how
Yeah.
they would tell the parents, this is what they're going to tell you, this is, they're going to try and manipulate you, don't believe them, this is what they're going to do. So then they don't believe anything we're saying. Like, and I was really looking for somewhere that would help the family unit.
Yeah.
And like her and I have talked about, you know, potentially in the future doing something along those lines that would facilitate something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I had found one place, but it was a couple hours away and it was way too expensive. And there was just no way, there's nowhere local to where we're at. And, there was no resources for us.
Right.
So I mean, in that moment, I understood some of the desperation as to
Right.
how or why they, a parent would be in the situation to do that. And I don't think that's something that you understand until you're there.
Yeah, it's actually come up with a couple other parents. One I've done an interview with, and then another that we've just been messaging online. But experiences like this with their own teens, to where they have either utilized a troubled teen program of sorts to help, or have considered it. And I just can't even imagine the complexity that we would be trying to navigate, having lived it ourselves, but now facing it with our own children, knowing I don't feel like I have the right tools or equipment to get through this phase with my child. I'm acknowledging I need help, but at the same time, you're torn up on the inside because you don't want to give them the same experience you had. You want it
Right.
to be better. You want it to be, to leave them better after the fact. And like you said, to have some sort of family counseling dynamic explored that would help facilitate communication between parents and children. I did find something in my journal about a parent workshop, and then we got to see our parents after the workshop, but I don't know what the word workshop is. It very well could have been just parents sitting and listening to what to expect.
Picton had some type of parent workshop
Yeah.
where you could come and learn more about the program, or if I can't remember the specifics of it, but I remember Picton having it, and like you could do an outing afterwards if they came, or like you could see, you'd be taken to Picton or something like that. Um, my thought would be it's not leaning along the mental health and work on reunification type thing,
Right. Right.
just with what we all experienced. But I do remember Picton doing something like that.
Yeah. So I was thinking back, as we're talking about the mental health stuff and the numerous cries that you put out there in the form of notes, trying to be able to talk to a staff member at that school. Do you remember any of the things that you would have wanted to talk about? Like, would they have been emotional? Would they have been school related? Because I remember begging for help on geometry, and it was a real struggle to get that.
So I don't remember ever asking for help school wise. I got myself in trouble there too. I spent Thanksgiving on the farm because I got in trouble in school.
Oh my goodness.
um, and that was after asking for help. Like, I remember when I did need help. Because I remember when I came in, I tested much lower grade wise than I was technically at. Um, but the help that we were getting was from the other girls that were there. So
Mm,
they had like other girls that, like, I remember one of my friends was really good at math. So if anyone had a math question, they were going to her about it.
yeah.
Or they would send her over there to do that or something like that. And there were, but I don't remember anyone ever really getting like significant help in it.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, and it wasn't. it was all self-paced, which in one sense is not necessarily that bad, but like we were grading our own work.
Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't, there was no lesson planning, there was no anything. You would put your flag up, you would go do it. And I remember there was one quiz that I could not pass, and I had taken it probably 10 times. Couldn't pass it, couldn't get any help for it. I finally had very lightly written in the answer while I was checking the work, and they had seen it somehow. I was told that God shined the light on it perfectly through the window when they were looking at it and highlighted that area.
Oh my goodness. Yep.
And so I spent Thanksgiving at the farm for that. They canceled my outing home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But I think it was just like needing to, with some issues with the younger girl. There were some issues with, I think there was probably a time where there was something about Sister Lucinda, because she definitely was, she had it out for me. Um, but I mean, sometimes in general, it's just needing somebody to talk to about something that was upsetting me, or, I'd have a conversation and, something was said in the conversation with my parents that week, and I wanted to talk to somebody about it, and there wasn't, like, you didn't get that.
Right. There was one of my journal entries was that I had just gotten off a call with my parents and I just talked to my dad and I felt like bawling, but I didn't know why because I wasn't homesick. And I was like, who are you trying to convince? So like I'm reading it and it's almost like I'm trying to say, but I'm not homesick. So I don't know why I'm sad. Like I'm really quiet. I feel like crying, but I don't know why because God is good. And it's
I
hard to read
remember
some of these.
I remember a specific phone call with my parents, but I sobbed the entire conversation while I was being told that I needed to stop because I was manipulating them and they were not going to come and get me, and I needed to have a conversation with them. And mind you, this is in front of everyone in the dorm because everyone's sitting there listening to your conversation. I don't remember. I think I might have gotten hard labor for that. It all kind of started to run together because I did a
But
lot of
yeah,
labor.
that feeling of tears just overwhelming you when you hear
Mhm.
a familiar voice on the other end of the phone. Like you've just spent a month, 2 months, whatever it was, kind of like developing that protective shell to be able to survive what you're in and not be homesick and crying all the time. And sometimes just that voice from home was enough to,
It was just enough to set you off.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And to know that you're not supposed to show those emotions because that's manipulative and can literally
Yep.
land you on hard labor. So then you're probably crying more because you don't want hard labor.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I had letters handed back to me that I had written to my family. I was like, nope, rewrite this. This isn't going out.
Yeah. And that's an important part too because some of us have letters from these days. I've got a journal from these days and it's like how much of that was authentic me and how much of it was because you knew that it was always being looked at and you wanted to say the right things so
Oh
you
yeah.
wouldn't get in trouble or
Well,
so
and
you
then
could be
and
elevated
if
to a
you
position.
yeah, and if you didn't want to write a letter, you were still required to write a
Yeah.
letter.
Yeah. There was no getting out of it. Yeah, I remember a couple of girls that really didn't want to write home and they were still forced to sit and write
Yep.
something on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see. Do you feel that any of the restrictions around food impacted your relationship with food later in your teen or adult years?
Probably.
Yeah.
I remember, so when I went there, I was maybe 90 pounds. I was teeny tiny. Like I pulled out that picture tonight and I was like, oh my God, I was so small.
Yeah.
Um, and I gained a lot of weight very quickly. Um, and I think it was because, like, I remember my first meal, didn't eat it, but I'm pretty sure that's the only meal that went in the slop bucket because I learned very quickly that you get a little bit of food, and if you don't eat it, it could be quite some time before
Yeah.
you're hungry again. So, like, I don't think I ever left anything on my plate because
Yeah.
I you wanted to eat it all because this may be all you get for, 6 to 8 hours. If you didn't like it, there was no other option. You didn't eat, so you would eat it. Like I know now, I'm very picky about like if I consider something good, and if I make a meal and I don't like it, I will not eat it.
Wow.
Like I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah.
to throw food away, but I will throw it away if I don't like it.
Right.
But I didn't. I mean, so and I gained a lot of weight very quickly to the point that like, because I was asking my parents to send me bigger clothes and they were getting concerned. And so I actually ended up at the doctor's one day for a pregnancy test because they were like, maybe she's pregnant. Mind you, I was a virgin.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, definitely not. I'm like, I'm just, and so I went from, because I would starve myself beforehand. Like that was my dealing with stress, was I would not eat when I
Yeah.
was younger. So I would, I would go days without eating. And then, to go so drastically and basically overnight from not eating to eating absolutely everything that was put in
Yeah.
front of me, even though it was not large portions and not very good food, it was still, I was eating
It was
all of it,
something. Yeah.
taking all the calories. Um, and my weight and eating habits have kind of flip flopped over the years to be
Yeah.
those two extremes, really.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure there's some. I haven't really dug into processing that one yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I honestly hadn't really thought much about the correlation between the two until I find myself measuring a cup of cereal in my kitchen and crying over it, going, wow, maybe there actually is something here.
mhm.
I think about your age too. I mean, 14-year-olds are still going through puberty. Like there's just this natural, like as hormones are figuring themselves out for females, just natural weight gain that happens that isn't because someone's eating too much or any of that. It's just natural. So,
Yeah, like they were getting up because I remember they wouldn't let girls have the scales because some girls were really concerned about that. But I remember for a while there, they were getting out the scale and weighing me to make sure that I wasn't gaining too much weight.
I am so sorry you experienced like that's making me choke up right now because as much stress and everything that we were dealing with, the number on the scale should have not even been on your mind. The fact that they were even concerning themselves with it is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, and like looking back at pictures, I'm like, man, if I was only as fat now as I thought I was then, like I was not that big then. Like, I was pretty tiny.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's some terrible comment that I've got in my journal, and it says something like enough with the cottage cheese look, like something about fasting more and eating less, and it was definitely a body conscious statement that I think back to those days. Why was I obsessing over that? It was a big deal on the farm though, this whole weight gain, weight loss, this hyper
Oh
fixation
yeah,
on
it was a
it.
huge thing. I mean, we would tell younger girls when they would come in, they'd be like, "Oh, don't," they'd say somewhere like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll gain enough weight here pretty soon. You'll
Yeah.
plump out."
Yeah, you'll get fat.
Yeah,
I remember us joking that it was fat camp.
yeah. And I think it was an extreme one way or the other. It was like the girls that came in heavier lost weight, and the girls that came in
Yeah.
skinny gained weight. But
I was
it's not. I
thinking,
mean, and it probably wasn't even food related. I mean, it was probably hormone related.
oh, 100%. And you think about cortisol, the stress hormone, and
Oh
what
yeah.
that does to people's weight. I'm sure that was coming into play too.
I
I,
mean,
I
and
thought
climate
about,
changes and inflammation.
yes, yes, sodium content. I mean, so many things that can play into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a girl that I remember being on a lot of hard labor, and she was a little on the heavier side, but watching her just not, I don't want to say waste away, but slim down so significantly. I mean, this in hindsight was a dramatic weight loss, and it was promoted as a good thing. I remember hearing some of the staff talk about it and like, look at the side benefit to hard labor. She's losing all this weight. And I'm thinking about this poor girl. She hardly talked when she wasn't on hard labor. So then you give her this extended hard labor. I don't remember this girl ever saying anything. She was just silent all the time, but her clothes were just hanging off of her after hard labor. And it's like,
Well, if
I
I
felt
remember,
such
most of the dorm moms were in no position to comment on our weight.
no, no. And fast forward to today, can you imagine any teacher literally getting on a teenage girl for her weight in any way? That just doesn't fly anymore. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, all this stuff then wasn't like, and I was talking to somebody, I was like, was it just normal back then? Like, was this like, it's just not like, I know 27 years ago, anxiety and depression and all of that wasn't popular,
Right,
even in the secular world. I know in the religious world, it wasn't a thing. It was you have an attitude adjustment,
right.
which is something I've dealt with over the years. But so, like, I know it wasn't like a common discussion then. It wasn't popular, if you will.
Right.
But like, was the hard labor popular? Like today, hard labor would be considered child abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, was it that? I mean, I was kind of sheltered, but like, was it like, I really wonder if it was normal then.
No, I mean, I remember getting chores sometimes as a punishment at home. My sister and I would have to even haul buckets of rocks at times. I remember dumping buckets of rocks behind a retaining wall and weeding the ivy or washing vehicles or something. But this was like one specific chore. You're not excluded from family mealtime, not allowed to talk, all these other things that go with it. It's like, I don't know that using chores as a punishment, that there's anything inherently bad about that. However, when this is chores to the point of physically breaking people down, 12 hours of hard labor with not enough calories to sustain a human, and then the added psychological, I'll call it psychological torture element of talk isolation and what that does to you, the fear of questioning, is it okay to say this, or is it going to be decided by a staff member that I spoke and didn't have a valid reason to be speaking? That leaves some lasting impacts on people, and I don't think that that's an acceptable punishment. Definitely not now.
Yeah, no, I mean, now people would go to jail for that.
Yeah, yeah. Diet culture was different back then. I will give you that. I think about the way that my mom or some of her friends would like talk about food and diet back then, just the culture and what it was, the commercials that were on TV, the Snackwell's low cal treats and the low fat everything that was just kind of coming into vogue back then. Some of it was culturally influenced. There was also this woman, I'm drawing a blank on her name now, but she did this program in churches that was all about weight loss. And there's been a documentary on her. My younger cousin actually got sent to one of these
I can't
seminars that
remember her name. I know what program you're talking about. I can't
blonde hair,
remember.
really slim woman. And yeah,
Yes, I can. I remember. Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google that.
yeah. So there was this concept in the church right around that same time that, being slim was somehow holier, and then we'd have these gigantic Southern church potlucks that were just smorgasbords, all you can eat. I loved those things. It was one of the few times we could eat our fill.
Yeah, they had stopped doing those when I was there. We
Oh,
didn't. We didn't do any pig roasting.
yeah. You didn't get the pig roast then.
Nope.
Do you remember what your favorite animals would have been on the farm?
Do you remember Henry,
Was that
the
one of the
miniature
cows?
horse that was the miniature horse that was blind?
No, I don't think I remember Henry.
Henry was one of my favorites, and then
Oh,
also Foxy was the other horse that didn't like anybody and would kick
no,
everybody.
she was cranky. Yep.
She was very cranky. Yeah, I was really upset because I had been working with her and she had just started to trust me and like let me touch her without freaking out before I left. But yeah, I remember those two were baby pigs. I don't like baby pigs. They were cute,
Yeah.
but I had another hard labor day where we loaded them into the trailer for slaughter. And we were literally grabbing them by their front and hind legs and tossing them. I did get bit by a pig.
Ouch.
That was fun. I was like, pigs don't bite. And I'm like, yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
Like, I got the scar to prove it. Oh, but definitely the horses.
Yeah.
The cows
Yeah.
and I weren't friends. I picked up enough of their poop that we did not get along.
Do you have any garden memories?
Oh, I have two in particular. The first one cracks me up. So I think it was my first work day, and my older girl and I were put out to till the garden. So I got there in April. So I had never tilled a garden before. My older girl was not thrilled with the idea that she had me. Um, I don't think she was paying attention, and I think I was told, go till over there. And so I took the big old tiller with my 90 pounds. I think the thing weighed more than I did. And I just tilled up the entire garden, not paying attention to anything. Nobody told me that where they had sent me to till the week before, they had just planted all the corn and onions. So I dug up every single corn and onion plant that had been planted. I never tilled again a day after that. Brother
Hey,
TK did not let me do that.
that's a good way to make sure you're not assigned a chore again. Oh my goodness.
And then my horror story is I remember harvesting the potatoes, and the potato plants had been the whole area had been taken over by red ants, and I was covered in them. I had stepped in a hole. I had them in my boots. I got eaten alive,
Yeah.
and I itched for days. Like, I mean, I had giant welts on my legs from my toes to, up past my knees. And I would just lay there in bed and itch at night and get yelled at for making so much noise. And, I
Those
asked for like
plastic
Benadryl, of
wrapped
course. And
mattresses.
yeah, yeah, those. And every time you move, everybody hears it.
Yep.
But like there was no, instead of giving me Benadryl or like, cortisone cream or something,
Yeah.
I was just told to pray about it. I had scars on my legs for those for almost 10 years before
Yeah.
I was able to get rid of them.
Oh my gosh, I love that you shared an ant story too. So those fire ants in Texas are something
They're mean.
completely different.
Yeah.
So I had dropped a can of nails and I went to pick it up, not realizing I had dropped it on an ant hill. And they were biting me all over my hands, and my fingers swelled up so much I couldn't even bend them. And was probably having an allergic reaction, same kind of thing. I remember itching for days. I remember like squeezing the little bites to try to relieve the pressure because they would get the little white tops on them, and
Yeah.
scars that lasted a long time. Those were brutal.
Yeah. Those ants aren't fun.
No, no. Let's see. So deep question. What's your relationship like with your parents these days?
So we moved about a year after I left the farm. And then about a year after that, we lost my mom.
I'm sorry.
Um, so we didn't, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, what would she think about all this right now?
Yeah.
So her and I did not have we were really just starting to work on having a relationship when I lost her. Um, my dad and I honestly have never spoken about the farm,
Yeah.
at least since as long as I don't remember ever having a conversation with him about it. Um, you know, we're on good terms. I see my
Yeah.
family, it's not something we don't talk about
Right.
farm.
Right. Right.
So, and I don't know how much influence he had as far as making that decision. Knowing my
Yeah.
mom, I think she probably was more of the driving factor.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not really something that, you know, it's in the past. It's kind of,
Sure.
it is what it is. We're done. There's no talking needed to be had about it.
And if it's like that for many of us, or at least it felt it was that way to many of us, I can imagine it being more so for our parents. They in their minds, they're doing the best they knew to do at that time, doing what they thought was right. And we all kind of survived and came out the other side and moved on. Nobody's life is perfect. I could see kind of having that way of looking at it, and then also a feeling of, well, what good is it going to do to revisit this? So
Exactly. Like, I mean, why
yeah,
dig up old stuff?
I don't need anything from them to try to come to terms with what I'm coming to terms with. I think for me in this phase of my life, just the freedom to be able to talk about it and to reach out and talk about it with people that also lived it, and just be able to tell some of these stories and allow myself to go down that
It's very
longer road.
cathartic telling the stories, even the not so great ones, and telling
Yeah,
it with people that, we all get it.
right.
Like, I could have this conversation with multiple, like your first episode, I sent to my best friend, I sent to my daughter. I was like, I don't know how she did it, but she explained it the best way you explained it.
And I feel so
I was
silly with
like,
that
this is
first
what I've
one.
been
Like,
trying to tell you.
my voice was shaking. I was so nervous. I was like, this is going to be so much easier when I can just talk to people. But like, I don't know. It's easy to write it down in words, sometimes a little harder to convey the message. And you start telling a little bit and you're like, this is complex. Like, how do I even?
Well, it is, and you just go into like 100 different memories at the same
Yeah.
time. Like you start telling one story and it's five others, and then you realize, wait, that's why I'm screwed up in that area of my life.
Right.
Like
And
it's
then
I'm
someone,
definitely unpacking a lot that like I've over the years, like, I've connected with different people and we have, we share some pictures and exchange
yeah,
a couple stories, but I'm really just starting to unpack all of it. Like
yeah,
I called a therapist this week. I was like, I need professional help sorting through this.
that's
I
good.
was like, it's been almost 30 years. Maybe it's time to process this.
Right. My brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, are psychologists. And I've been reaching out to them a little. They're listening to the episodes, and I haven't scheduled it yet, but I'm gonna schedule an episode with them. I'm curious to hear just some
I would
professional
love to
insight.
hear their who kind of, yeah, who I would love. Like
Yeah,
I've since you mentioned like the boarding school syndrome, like I've done a lot of research on that and like I fit that to a T. I'm like, that's why I'm in my 40s and single.
there's things, right? You're just
It
like,
makes
oh, wait a
sense.
minute. Maybe there's
I'm
a
like,
reason for this.
yeah, I'm like that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
And sometimes just being able to connect the dots gives you this little insight into yourself, maybe a little more
Hmm.
empathy, because just the way that I was raised, having the experience of Holy Highway, it reinforced some of these perfectionist type tendencies of it's not okay to not be okay. It's
Yeah.
not okay to look like you're depressed or sad, or, it's not okay for something to have an emotional impact on you. You almost need to be this steel facade. I can handle everything because I've lived through it.
Well,
Um,
and I think a lot of us carry that with us. Like, I mean, I was going through some of the hardest times of my life a couple years ago, with my daughter. And if you didn't know firsthand what I was going through, you didn't like, I was still smiling. I went
yeah,
to work every day. I got my job done. Like people that didn't know what was going on didn't have a clue.
yeah,
Like, and I think that, we all had a very good lesson on fake it till you make it,
100%.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that survival mentality of what do I need to do to survive this place? How can I mask? What does that
Yeah,
mask look
exactly.
like that I need to put on to
Yeah,
survive in here?
yeah, absolutely. Like, oh, they're not going to let you go until you've done X, Y, and Z. So let's figure out how we can do X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
and get out.
Yeah, no, that phrase, 9 months to a year or longer if necessary. You
Hmm.
just didn't want to be stuck in that longer if necessary group because we all knew a small handful of girls that just seemed to be there forever.
Yeah, yeah, there were a couple. And then the ones that came back too.
Yeah, yeah. And then the threat of somewhere worse. Did you ever hear about New Bethany?
I did hear about New Bethany. I think I said once, fine, you can go ahead and send me there.
It would be
I think I
interesting.
might have told my parents that too, because the we'll send you back. You're not 18 yet came up a few times. And I'm pretty sure once or twice I said, well, why don't you just send me to New Bethany and get it over with?
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was young. So I had quite a few years left. I could have done, probably 4 stints there.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably part of the scary part. I mean, even me getting out the second time and having less than 2 months until I turned 18, I was terrified for those 2 months that it was going to happen.
No, I remember turning 18 and being like, all right, I made it.
Yeah.
They can't
Yeah.
send me back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being a part of this healing journey with me and the rest of us that are electing to open this chapter because it's a fascinating one and it's not one that I can tell the story by myself because I only lived it from my own perspective. Like each one of us that were there came with our own backstory and had our own experience there from the lens that we looked out of. And it it's just interesting to hear how it
It is.
impacted
I'm
you.
loving hearing everybody's stories
Yeah.
and, seeing how different things are. Compared to how we had, kind of seen them ourselves and
Yeah.
people's personalities. And, you know, it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for telling your story, for helping shed some more light on this chapter, bringing more of my own memories into focus, sharing some other ones that are going to be really cool for some of the people out there to hear. And just for the bravery to do this, because I know it's awkward and it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there. And
That it is.
So
I've been sipping on my wine for the last hour.
good. So, to any of you that are still contemplating whether or not to tell your story, we would absolutely love to hear from you. I promise I won't make it too scary. I'd love to talk to you. But Melody, thank you so much for sharing your story and
My
for
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
being one of the strong survivors of Holy Highway. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.